everyone. Thanks for taking the time to join us today. My name is Max Dinerman. I'm the Director of Sales for Research and Sponsored Programs at InfoReady Corporation. Today's webinar will be covering the benefits of the Pivot and InfoReady review integration. We have a guest panelist here, Haley Bohall. She is the Research Opportunity Manager at Arizona State University. Next slide, please. All right, awesome. So those of you who have joined us before know a little bit about our Peer Spotlight webinar. Peer Spotlight webinar series. Today's Peer Spotlight is going to cover, as I mentioned, the Pivot and InfoReady review integration. Our panelist, Haley Bohall, is from Arizona State, and she'll be sharing her best practices for finding funding opportunities and managing the subsequent internal competitions and selection processes in the review workflow. Haley is also going to provide a live walkthrough of the process using the integration between Pivot and InfoReady review. So this is a great opportunity to actually see that integration in action for those of you who never have. Just a couple of housekeeping items about the webinar today. Our webinar is scheduled for 60 minutes, and we're going to do as best as we can to get you out of here in 60 minutes. We're going to start out with Haley's presentation, which will be about 15 minutes. We'll do about 30 minutes of Q&A with the panelists afterwards, and you can enter your questions in the questions bar on your GoToMeeting control panel. We encourage all of you to enter questions, and again, we'll answer those after Haley's presentation. And then we'll just have a couple of quick overview presentations from ProQuest Pivot and InfoReady Corporation, respectively. The webinar recording will be on our website, and it'll be up next week. All of your phones are muted, so if you have any questions or comments or anything, please use the questions box on your GoToMeeting control panel or through the chat option in your GoToMeeting control panel. And don't forget to fill out our post-webinar survey, which will be sent out to you right after we end here today. Next slide, please. All right, so a little bit about our presenter today, Haley Bohall from ASU. As I mentioned, Haley is the Research Opportunity Manager at ASU. Her primary responsibility is to support and coordinate limited submissions and internal competitions for sponsored project proposals, and to assist faculty researchers in the development, preparation, and submissions of those proposals to various federal and non-federal agencies. She interacts with faculty and staff across disciplines to provide research advancement support and assist in providing solutions to issues associated with sponsored projects. Haley also serves as a liaison between PIs and the ASU Office for Research and Sponsored Projects Administration and the ASU Foundation. She has a BA in History and an MA in Public Administration and has earned the designation of Certified Research Administrator. And without further ado, I'll turn it over to Haley here. Thanks so much, Haley.
Thanks, Max. I appreciate you guys having me today. I appreciate the introduction. I don't have anything else to cover. That's kind of me in a nutshell. To give a little background of the Research Development Office at ASU, we have approximately 10 people in a centralized office under the leadership of the Assistant Vice President for Research, and we work in collaboration with all of the university's colleges, schools, and units. Some of those units might or might not have their own research development support. If they do, we integrate with them to serve the needs of the faculty. So we serve all units, all colleges here at ASU. Each function of the research development team has a distinct role. We have proposal management, competitive intelligence, graphics, events, and then my role as the limited submissions and internal competitions coordinator. We try not to view our roles as individual silos, but really we see them across the larger picture to seamlessly enhance the quality and improve the growth of the university's research portfolio. So our research development team works collectively to just enhance the growth of the university. Next slide, please. Today, I'm going to be mostly just doing a live demonstration of how I use Pivot and InfoReady to publish these announcements that we come across that are limited. As I said, my role focuses solely on limited submissions. So I use InfoReady to run competitions, to provide internal deadlines, and accept applications for these limited competitions. Most of these are external funded sources. Some of them are internal. So on my InfoReady site, I'll show you I have a couple different areas to save things. And one of the major tasks that falls under my functional area is the sorting and finding of these publications. Actually, I also have student support that helps me with that. And so I find this process so simple that I actually push it out to students to do for me during the week. And this is something we do weekly. And so I'll show you each step as we go. Each week, we update our information and current postings, and we find new reoccurring opportunities. For this kind of searching, we only focus on limited, like I said. And then I also use a couple different resources to do that. I use Pivot, and I use, of course, federal funding agency listservs and grants.gov. Let me see here. Pivot and InfoReady are, of course, distinct services. One I use to review eligibility and search, and the other I use to publish and provide to my faculty. Next slide, please. Okay, so each of them requires you to have an administrator role, and how I got signed up to do it is I contacted the InfoReady support team, and they were able to work with the Pivot support team to make sure I have access to have both. I think another panelist on this presentation will be able to give you more details about how to have it set up, but I just emailed the support at InfoReady Corp, and they were able to manage the setup for me completely. Next slide. Okay, so from here, I'm going to go ahead and do the live demonstration. If you'll let me have the screen control, you'll all be able to see my screen, and I'll go through a live demonstration for you. Okay, I think you'll be able to see my screen now. And here I'm logged into Pivot. You can see I'm logged into Pivot, and I'm also logged into InfoReady. And from here, I can look for funding opportunities. And so I have saved searches, I have tracked opportunities. You can do this a bunch of different ways, but from my saved searches, this is my continual, ongoing, limited submission search. And this week it pulled 11 new search results for me to review. And like I said, I have a student worker who reviews these for me and brings them to my attention. And then we decide whether or not ASU is eligible, or if it's something our faculty are interested in, or if we have a specialty in. So there's a couple of different ones here to look through. But I'm actually going to pick a different one just by searching here. So this one is a popular one here at Arizona State.
Hey, Haley, could you hold on one moment? Some people are reporting that they can't see your screen.
Oh, okay, yeah, no problem. I'll definitely hold up. Let me know. On my side, it says audience view 100%.
Oh, can everyone see Haley's screen?
It should show Pivot and ASU at the top.
I can see it, Carlos. So.
Okay, we can see it. We got it now.
Oh, good. Okay, I'm sorry. And I kind of talk a little fast. So if you have any questions or need me to slow down, just please go ahead and ask them in the chat box, and we'll make sure to get them answered for you. Here I'm logged into Pivot, and I'm also logged into InfoReady. I'll kind of start again. And you can see that I'm logged into both systems, and I've searched for an opportunity. This one is the National Science Foundation Research Trainee Program, which is very popular here at Arizona State. And Pivot, of course, gives you all the information you need to make the decision whether or not your institution is eligible. It gives you the link to the funding agency. It gives you the CFCA numbers, which is interesting for your university if you track that. It gives you the limited submissions information. It pulls it out of the funding opportunity, which is just fantastic. And it gives you all of these details, and also gives you anticipated upcoming deadlines and whether or not if they're confirmed or not. So I love Pivot for that. It helps me to just organize my calendar and timeline. From here, literally all you have to do is push this button here, push to InfoReady, and it automatically does it. It takes like 5 seconds. You'll see it working. It automatically pulls up the InfoReady page for you. And I have templates set up, but you don't have to use your templates. You can use InfoReady templates, whatever works for you. And this is all you do. You just go ahead and start creating your InfoReady page, and it automatically pulls in the details from Pivot. And then you get to pick your deadlines according to your policies. You get to pick what information you want to keep. This has a little bit more information than I normally share, and so I just go through and quickly decide what is interesting or not to my faculty. And then I just quickly edit it to meet what my standard practice is. So I don't need the CFDA numbers here. I don't track those internally, and so faculty don't need to have them either. They're just kind of extra information. I'm quickly just editing this to make it look how I like it to look and how our institution runs things. And so, of course, you can do it how you want to do it. There we go. That's looking like how I would like it to look. And then, of course, I have all this information here that I want to add in, or if I want to add in details regarding the funding announcement, you would just stick them here. And you can just then go through your, oh, I forgot my deadlines. Oops. Put those out a little ways. We always use 5 o'clock for our stuff. And I also removed the home page, stays the same. And if I go look here, December, perfect. And you can just go through your regular InfoReady settings and see what you like to add and what you're going to require of your applicants. I have a template pre-built, and so this is all the things that I've pre-built into that template. I ask certain questions. I ask them to provide information whether or not they've been if they've applied before, and if they have, what did the reviewers say, that kind of thing. We also have our standard limited submissions details. And so we just require the normal things, and it's already in there because I used the template. And this is my standard routing steps, and so I just have it already built, and that makes it simple. And I just decide that my general mailbox is the co-administrator for other notifications. I don't do any reporting in InfoReady for these types of projects, and so I don't require that. And then I can launch it, and it's completely done. That's it. So I literally just pushed the InfoReady button here, and it created the InfoReady page for me, and I was able to edit it how I saw fit. And then this is a launch site on ASU's page right now. I go to ASU. Due date. We have a lot of things posted currently, but there it is. So you can see that that was the easiest thing to do, the easiest way to put something in InfoReady. There's no copying and pasting from a funding announcement. There's no just double typing everything. It's a simple process. That's kind of my live demonstration. Unless there's questions, or if you'd like me to show you a different way to do it from searching instead of just finding it, the one I already knew was out there, I can take any questions now. Carlos, Max, would you let me know if there's any questions?
Yeah, thanks so much, Haley. We really appreciate you showing us that. And we do have a couple questions here. Those of you who are attending here, if you want to submit any questions for Haley, please do so in the question box. The first question: for opportunities that list future multiple annual deadlines, how do you keep up with those since they're not usually picked up in alert notifications once the initial deadline has passed?
Yeah, so here at ASU, and I think at each institution, it might be different. You probably have to create a policy for yourself. We just monitor things, I call them pending confirmation, and I have a monitored list. And so things like the NRT that I know are going to happen every single year, but they might push the deadline a little bit, or there might be a delay in the release of the solicitation. I monitor those separately from Pivot and InfoReady. I have a maintained list that I monitor. And so Pivot helps me to anticipate the list, and then I go and monitor that list myself.
All right, thanks so much.
Yeah, I'm willing to talk with whomever ask that question offline. If they want to contact me, we can kind of discuss best practices, what they do, what I do, and see what kind of mixes together. I think that is just so institutionally individualized.
All right, next question here. If you find a funding opportunity via an agency announcement, i.e. not in Pivot, how does that change the way you'll use InfoReady to push it out?
Honestly, I just go find it in Pivot then. Very rarely does Pivot not have it. And so if I am emailed it and I just go find it in Pivot and then do the push, then I don't have to copy and paste from the solicitation or just, wonder if that's the most current solicitation if I was emailed it. Sometimes agencies will post a solicitation and then quickly update their website and have a new version of it. And so if I'm emailed something or if I find it on a website, I then go find it on Pivot to push it. If Pivot doesn't have it, then I just have to do it the old-fashioned way and kind of just copy and paste everything in there from the solicitation.
And I'll expand on that a little bit for those of you who don't have the Pivot integration or aren't familiar with it. If you want to publish an opportunity in InfoReady Review and kind of run a competition for an opportunity that's not in Pivot, you can always just kind of enter the data for the opportunity. So, either copying and pasting from the funding organization's website or just entering, the existing communication that you have if it's an internal opportunity.
Yeah, that's how we have done it in the past and still continue to do it that way if it's not in Pivot. And so, especially for the internal things here at ASU, they're not going to be published in Pivot. And so we just need to manually enter them into InfoReady. And then the InfoReady form is created just like normal.
All right, thanks, Haley. We have a number of other questions coming in here. So the question here is, what is your mechanism from going from your InfoReady listing to the ASU website? So if you could kind of clarify that and flesh that out, that would be great.
Yeah, sure. This question might be coming from an ASU colleague if they're referencing our internal funding.asu site, which is internal. It's behind a firewall. And so if they're referencing that, it is a copy and paste from InfoReady to our funding, but there will be changes coming soon to that to modernize our website. And so if that person wants to contact me, we can talk about what's coming soon. We'll be hopefully integrating our InfoReady site with our funding site. And so there will be no duplication of efforts. It'll be straight from InfoReady to funding. And so that'll be a new feature that we're working to build right now with collaboration from InfoReady. And so we've contacted the InfoReady support team and developers to help us create a custom solution for that.
All right, thanks, Haley. Next question, and I'll actually take this one. Is the InfoReady button in Pivot automatically available, or does it need to be specifically built? So the short answer to that is that it needs to be specifically built on a client-by-client basis, but it is free and it doesn't take very long to stand up. So if you have a license for Pivot and you have a license for InfoReady, feel free to reach out to either the InfoReady team or your Pivot contact to discuss the integration, and they'd be happy to help.
Yeah, let me just add a little comment on that. It was super simple. I just gave them my information for Pivot and my information from InfoReady, and then the support team just told me when it was completed. It didn't require any hands-on effort from my staff or me. It was just a seamless upgrade that I just asked for, and it happened. And so I'm sure that they'll be able to do the same for you guys. It's simple to ask for it.
All right, thanks, Haley. Another question here. How did you do this before you had the InfoReady Pivot integration, and kind of what does that change look like for you?
Yeah, so before we used, if you can still see my screen, we used our saved searches here in Pivot, and I have a student read through them and determine all eligibility and our interest and suggest whether or not we post them, and then we download the PDF funding announcements, and we save those. And then we go through each funding announcement and copy and paste descriptions and titles of the opportunity just so we make sure it's correct. And we input the information into Pivot, into InfoReady that way. And so we would copy and paste from the funding announcement to InfoReady by copying and pasting. And then we would create the form in InfoReady and save it, just the back half of the InfoReady side. So it saves a lot of time because I don't need to copy and paste the description or the details of the funding announcement any longer. And it's kind of a seamless application rather than having an employee, a student worker, download everything and then continue to do something. It's just deciding in Pivot, pushing it to InfoReady, and then they set it up in InfoReady for me and leave it as a draft, and then I launch it as the final approval.
All right, thanks, Haley. So we have another question that was similar to one that came before. How did you add the InfoReady site to your ASU website? And actually, I think, just to kind of clarify this, can you go to your InfoReady site really quickly, just your InfoReady homepage? All right, so just for everyone who's not familiar with InfoReady, the page Haley's on right now is actually not part of the Arizona State website. It's branded for the Arizona State, and it looks like a piece of the Arizona State IT infrastructure, but what you're looking at is actually Haley's instance of InfoReady Review. And so InfoReady actually serves as the kind of intake mechanism and announcement page for these opportunities. So I wanted to kind of clear that up, and if that makes sense to those of you who asked the question about the website, just let me know in the chat box. Is there anything else you wanted to add to that?
Oh, I'm sorry, maybe I misunderstood the question before. If the question is how did I add the competition to this site, by launching it, it automatically goes to the home page if the home page date is later than today's date. And so when I launched the competition that I did the demonstration on, I put the home page date as July 1st and the internal deadline is July 1st, and so it automatically went to this home page that I'm on right now. Yeah, this is the InfoReady ASU homepage. It's not ASU's website. It's the InfoReady website. If the question is the other way around, yeah.
Yeah, sometimes for folks who aren't familiar with InfoReady, there's a little bit of confusion about what's the actual client site and what's the InfoReady.
Sure, yeah, sorry about that. This is the external.
Oh, no, it's okay. We have another question here. How do you determine your internal deadline? Is there a set amount of time you try to give faculty from the time they're selected through limited submissions to the full application deadline?
Sure. This is also another question that I talk often about with other limited submissions coordinators. It just varies by institution policy and their faculty needs and the solicitation. Our standard internal deadline is at least 8 weeks prior to the sponsor deadline, because our review process takes 2 weeks and we give faculty at least 6 weeks to then prepare the full proposal. Depending on the solicitation and the complicated requirements or the strategic initiative of the university, we can push that internal deadline out. So sometimes it's 10 weeks, sometimes it's 12 weeks. For really large ones, you know, up to 6 months ahead of time, ahead of the sponsor deadline, because the review process might take a long time. And then we want to ensure that the faculty who are approved to move forward to the full proposal have enough time to prepare a solid competition for the agency to submit to. And so we do at least 8 weeks. Otherwise, it's our policy is to do first come, first serve after 8 weeks. And so our deadline is 8 weeks before.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Haley. So this is an interesting question. How did you convince the powers that be to adopt InfoReady and Pivot?
Well, when I came on board to this position, I've been in the research development office 1 year, but I've been in the research services area for like 8.5 years here at Arizona State. And so I've been familiar with Pivot for many years, and it's our main searching tool here at the university. And so when I came on board to the research development office that manages limited submissions, we had been using InfoReady already for about 2 years. And so people in my position previously didn't use the pivot function. I don't think they saw all the wonderful things that it does, and so they chose not to use it. But I was on a webinar actually for InfoReady that showed it, and I think the University of Michigan was giving a demonstration, and so I liked it and I asked for it. It is I think you might have to correct me, but I think it's a free addition to the Pivot InfoReady integration. I don't think there's an additional cost to it. So I just asked the IT support from InfoReady to set it up for me, and they did. And so there was no powers that be that needed to make the decision. I do this daily work, and so it's in my purview to operate how I see easiest.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Haley. Here's a great question. How does ASU find and incentivize reviewers to serve as reviewers of limited submissions and internal competitions?
Yeah, this is always tricky. I hear from other people that this is very tricky, and it is for us as well. We maintain a list of standing panelists, about maybe about 100 people on the list in different areas of the colleges and universities, from every college and university, all specialties, all disciplines. And those names are nominated to the list by the assistant directors for research, the ADRs here at the university. And so they update that list on an annual basis, and people typically serve about 3 years on the panel. They don't always end up participating, depending on scheduling conflicts or conflicts of interest for their own submissions. But the list is provided by the directors for research, and then I call upon them to serve when I need them to. And the response rate is pretty good, but just like anything else, people are busy and they have their own work to attend to, and so I have to carefully find enough reviewers for each panel I need from that list I maintain. For incentivization, we offer letters to their department to show that they've served. We provide lunches and annual thank you recognition lunches, that kind of thing. So it's not a paid position, but it is part of their service to the university.
All right, thanks, Haley. Another question here. How do your researchers know about the InfoReady site? So how do you kind of socialize it to them and publicize it to them?
Yeah, so I kind of touched on this earlier when I was confused about the question. Our internal site, funding.asu, automatically links them to InfoReady when they want to apply to something. So where they might go naturally to find an opportunity that's limited is the funding site. And then to apply, it would link them to the InfoReady site. We're going to be integrating that, so it's one less step for them. But we use internal emails and internal notifications and just regular dissemination to send out notices regarding limited submissions. And so when they go look for that on our internal site, they're directed immediately to the InfoReady site to apply. So one click to the correct application site.
All right, we have another reviewer question here. On average, how many faculty do you try to assign per review?
So it depends on how many applications I have. For an upcoming review that we're anticipating 10 applications, I have 6 faculty reviewers plus the limited submissions chair who also reviews. And so I say that's 6 reviewers for 10 applications. My numbers are anywhere from like 3 to 7. It kind of ranges depending on how many applications we have and how complex the solicitation is. We have an internal seed grant program in collaboration with the Mayo Clinic, and we typically receive between 40 and 50 LOIs, and we have approximately 15 reviewers for that one. So it kind of just varies based on solicitation and the amount of applications we're expecting.
All right, great. Thanks so much. this is an interesting question. So this person is interested in using a template. What do you feel is important to include in your application process template, in your workflow template?
Well, I want the applications to be the same every time. I want faculty to know that it is a standard 3 to 5 page application. So I have that built into my template. Actually, here on the screen, if you can still see my screen, I'm going to click like I'm going to apply. This is our normal questions. These are what faculty expect to answer every time, and so these are what I've built into the template. I want them to put their RA name and email address. Their RA is their research administrator. They should know that contact person. If they don't, this is kind of like a hint that they need to know that contact person. And so I have them do that. I have them retype the funding opportunity because I want them to make sure they're applying to the right thing. I also have them answer a couple questions, and then I have them upload their standard documents. And so the template is what I want them to do every single time, no matter what. If something has to change based on the solicitation, then I edit the template for that opportunity. Sometimes a sponsor will only want a 1-page summary, and so I don't make them provide us a 3 to 5 page summary, I just make them provide us a 1-page summary. So the standard template should be, in my opinion, the things that you want every single time from them, so they are familiar with the items.
Thanks, Haley. So this is a question about access. So does your student worker need special rights to pivot to access it?
Yes, we have an administrator role for our student worker in Pivot. She has the administrator role in Pivot for that purpose. Correct.
All right. Next question. How has your daily workload changed since moving to the solution in terms of Pivot and InfoReady and the integration?
It's just a lot quicker. And so the students already are the ones who do the first pass at solicitations because we read so many of them. I don't have time to read that many solicitations, but they do. And so they are the ones who read and go through. But it used to be almost an all-day process for them to find and then reproduce the information on InfoReady and kind of track it that way. And now it's definitely just a few hours in the morning. It's a quick little task that they work on. They can easily push from Pivot to InfoReady, and it's a quick task for them to do rather than an all-day process.
Great. Thanks so much, Haley. Let's see if we have some more questions here. So we have a couple of questions about what the actual review of proposals looks like in InfoReady. You know, if you could maybe go over that for a few minutes here, and we can also, if anyone's interested in seeing more of what happens in InfoReady after the demo, you can also reach out to me.
Sure. Let me open up a template and show you what the review setup looks like. And from there, we can kind of look at what it is. And so this is a regular template that I'm just setting up a new competition with. And the review is actually called routing steps in InfoReady. And here's where you determine if you're going to even have a routing step or not. Some things you don't even need to have reviews done, so you just don't have a routing step. But I set up a build my own form. I chose that option. In the past, we've also done comments and ratings, but the build my own form allows me to do it a little differently. And so I have this in my standard template. This is my information I need to fill in. So I have the reviewer, I give them the link to the solicitation, I give them some review criteria, I give them some RFP criteria, just so they know exactly what they're trying to review. And of course, I give them my contact information, so if they have any questions. And then I ask them questions like, what are the strengths and weaknesses? Can they provide a score how well does the proposal match the specific solicitation? And then I ask them if they can provide any comments on the successfulness of the proposal. And so here is where you can build out whatever you want to ask the reviewers. You get to choose, and then they are asked to respond to those questions. You can also pick things like if you want them to see the identity of the applicant or not, if you want them to have access to all of the applications or just the ones they're assigned to, and you can pick these custom things. Then you can also have them do an acknowledgement, and I just have them acknowledge that they have no conflict of interest, just to confirm that they're not on this project, or a reminder that if they're currently working with the PI on something, maybe they shouldn't be reviewing. And that's the simple side. From here, it looks a little different for the reviewers. I don't think I have any reviews right now to show you, but that's what you can set up on the reviewer side. So they are shown those questions and provided a text box to respond to those questions in. I hope that answers the question. I'm not quite sure.
And again, if the person who asked that question wants to see a little bit more of what that looks like on the back end and actually routing through to those reviewers, you can reach out to us and we can show you that. We don't want to do it on our live site in a live competition. One thing to clarify, we're getting a couple questions here about, costs and things like that. So one thing to clarify is that Pivot and InfoReady Review are separate entities, separate products. While the integration is free, you do need to have licenses for both InfoReady and for Pivot to leverage that integration. But once you have those licenses, the actual integration itself does not cost any extra money. Can you go over a little bit how you save searches in Pivot and how you kind of save filters and things like that?
Yeah, so we have a saved search, and this is my live site, and so I actually just have 3 saved searches right now, just a couple. When I was a research administrator, I had much more when I was working directly with faculty. But this is our limited submissions search, and you can see that it's found 759 search results over the year here, but this week just 11. And so this is automatically searched. Let me click in here. You kind of see the settings we have. What we've done is we're just wanting it to pull all limited submissions items, or what Pivot calls internal coordination required. That's maybe something that ASU or an institution can submit more than 1 or 2 applications, but it also has a limit from the sponsor that we can't submit anything similar or any exact, 2 requests for the same instrument or something like that. And then we just have it based in the United States, and that's kind of it. But Pivot has all of these options for refining your search, and then your custom search is made from this site. This is where you refine and customize your search for it to give you good results. But we just have it marked for limited submissions because that's all that I would like to track. I don't care what field it's in. I don't care what discipline. I don't care who the sponsor is. If it has a limitation, I would like to review it and determine if ASU is wanting to apply to it. And then Pivot does a weekly result. So it comes, I think it's Sunday morning. It sends you an email, and it gives you these new 11 items, and that's where our students start reviewing from.
All right, we've got time for a couple more questions here. So next question, is there a specific day or time of the week that you push all the opportunities live to the InfoReady site? And do you also have any kind of weekly mailing to announce any new funding opportunities to your faculty?
Sure. We do it on Mondays or Tuesdays, depending on my student schedule. It just takes about a half a day, or a couple hours in the morning to do it. And then on our internal site, that's where our notifications go out automatically on Fridays. And so it gives us the week to kind of make sure everything's good, and then the opportunities go out on Fridays. But we normally do these on Mondays and Tuesdays. Actually, I think my student's doing them right now. So probably. I went up here for me to review. Yeah, so she's drafted these for me to look at, and then I'll approve them.
All right, and I think this is the last question we have time for here. How many students do you have working for you to review limited submission opportunities from Pivot?
Actually, it's just one student. I think I've used the plural students a couple times during this webinar, but it is one student. She's fabulous, and it's her and I who focus on this. And so when she's away for the summer, it's me. When it's her and me, we do it together. She does the bulk of the reviewing, and I do the overarching yes or no approvals on them, and that's kind of it. It's just me and her.
All right, well, I think that's all the time we have for questions for Haley. As Haley mentioned earlier, she's happy to take your questions offline, so she's made herself available, and her contact info is in this slide deck, which is in the handout section of your GoToMeeting control panel. Thanks so much, Haley, for your time and for sharing this with us. This is really helpful, and I know we have a lot of folks who asked us about seeing this integration in action, so we really appreciate you coming in and showing it to us today.
Absolutely, and I'm assuming someone will take the screen back.
Yep, so now we're just gonna have some quick overview presentations from InfoReady and from Pivot here. So with that, I'll give it over to Eddie Newworth from Pivot.
Okay, thank you, Max. Thank you so much, Haley. That was a great presentation, really awesome overview of that whole workflow, and thank you all for the questions that sort of inspired the conversation. I am going to give you the 5-minute kind of rapid fire what you need to know about Pivot if you're not already familiar with it. As I was introduced before, I am the Senior Director of Product Management for Ex Libris. Ex Libris is a ProQuest company, and my contact information will be available at the end. So if anybody wants to reach out and get more information about Pivot, feel free to contact me directly. As Haley demonstrated, Pivot is really the most comprehensive one-stop place to find funding opportunities, and what sets Pivot apart from other solutions is really the ability to also integrate collaborator discovery. So we not only make it possible to search for funding opportunities, we also create profiles for your researchers. So there's a combination of being able to match funding opportunities to your researchers, and may also be something that's helpful, as I was hearing Haley talk, in part of your need to find reviewers for limited submission. You may be able to use some of that functionality for that as well. Next slide, please. Again, overview. It's a very large database of funding opportunities is the core of what Pivot is. It is created by editors. We actually have humans who edit all of this content and sort of scour the universe of available funding opportunities. The database is global in nature, so it's not just US-based. At any given time, there's anywhere from 45 to 70, $80 billion worth of active funding opportunities. We are updating that content daily. So as you mentioned, as Haley mentioned, the ability to kind of find what she might find elsewhere in Pivot is highly likely. Really what sets Pivot apart is not just the ability to search for it, but there's sort of a wealth of tools and features that are aimed at administrators to help with their workflow. Obviously, the InfoReady integration being one of those that is most useful. Next. So real high level, I'm not going to cover all of this data here, but it is a very large set of funding opportunities. We have at any given time sort of more than 20 to 25,000 active funding opportunities available. And again, I stress active, as we are constantly sort of weeding out what is not currently available. We track more than 13,000 sponsors, and all of this content is a wide variety of sponsor types. So it's not just, say, federal U.S. government, a lot of sort of private, commercial, local funding, non-U.S. funding, et cetera, across a variety of different types of funding as well. So, the core of it being research funding, but there's anything from sort of travel grants to art awards to awards and prizes and all of that sort of stuff in the database. And one of the things we do, which Haley demonstrated, is we'll flag anything that's limited submission or that requires sort of internal coordination. So we make it very easy for you to identify that type of content, which, as Haley mentioned, is really what she was mostly interested in. So you can very easily zoom in on what you're looking for. Next. Real high-level features. Haley showed you the demonstration of what she could do, but again, it's not just the ability to search for funding, but you can sort of, as a personal researcher or as an admin who might be in research development or looking for funding on behalf of others, you can track opportunities, you can create lists of opportunities. As Haley demonstrated, she has a list or a curated search of limited submission only. You could make that any topic or any variety of search criteria, and Pivot will do the work for you and sort of track it on your behalf. You can get weekly alerts on what's new that matches your particular area of interest or search criteria. And then there's a sort of wealth of features for sort of sharing opportunities with either other individuals or groups, and a lot of different things that you can do to kind of make it fit your particular workflow around finding funding. Next. And again, Haley demonstrated the ability to sort of get what we call the detailed funding opportunities. Will sort of give you all the information you need to know about a particular funding opportunity, including the contact information and eligibility requirements and all of that sort of thing. But what, again, sets Pivot apart is the ability to match it to profiles or potential collaborators at your institution. So for every funding detail, you'll also see this little thing off on the right that says profile matches, and that would point to people within your institution who, based on an algorithm, we might think are good matches for that particular funding opportunity. And the profile database for Pivot is global, so you can actually look beyond your institution as well for potential collaborators. Next. This is an example of a profile. That's my picture. I am not a researcher, so that's made up data. It's not my publications. But for any profile, you can sort of do the reverse in Pivot, which is not only can you look for funding, but you could search people's profiles, and then based on that person's profile, we'll provide a recommendation of potential funding opportunities that would be good for that particular person. So that's just another sort of workflow and way to if you might be looking for funding on behalf of somebody at your institution, you can kind of start from their profile and then go from there and see what funding opportunities in the database might match that person based on their particular information there. Next. Individuals, if you have claimed a profile in Pivot, will get an automatic, what we call an advisor alert email. So based on the information in your profile, you'll automatically get an email every week with recommended funding opportunities. We'll flag what's new for that particular week. You can also sort of click through and see, additional sort of past recommendations as well. If you search in Pivot and you save a search, and you could do multiple searches as well, you'll also get a weekly email on that. It's one email. We're not spamming you with a lot of emails. It's one email. It'll combine all of those recommendations for you. And you can just sit back and it'll come to your inbox. You don't even necessarily need to actively engage with Pivot to get the benefit from it. Next. Lots of varieties and ways that you can search Pivot. So obviously, from the most basic, somebody who doesn't really know how to search for funding, you can do basic Google-like searching, free text terms. You can search by sponsor. So if you have a specific sponsor or set of content you want to get alerts on, show me everything that is available from DoD this week or Homeland Security or anything like that. You could go by sponsor. You can use our keywords. We have a controlled vocabulary of thousands of research-oriented keywords that our editors actually apply to each of the funding opportunities, which sort of optimizes all of this content for discovery. And then, of course, there's advanced search capabilities, which Haley demonstrated a little bit of, where you could go into an advanced search form and set any criteria you want. For example, just show me limited submission, or you could say just show me limited submission for this particular discipline or this particular dollar amount. any of that. You can get as granular as you want with the searching. So next. And I always like to just point out a few features. As Haley mentioned, she learned about the Pivot and InfoReady integration from a webinar like this. So Pivot, as I said, has many, many features that are geared around helping you with your workflows. This is one of our newer ones. We just released, actually this week, a new calendar view where you can view all of the deadlines for a particular list or results set as a calendar in Pivot, and then you can actually sync those funder deadlines, or you can even set your own reminder deadlines with your own personal calendar application. So again, really trying to find ways to fit Pivot and the data in Pivot into your own kind of internal workflows. Next. A couple other features. One that maybe, Haley, you haven't thought about yet is the ability to add your internal funding opportunities into Pivot. You may wonder why to do that, but if you add your own internal opportunities into Pivot for your institution, they become searchable as part of Pivot. They can be recommended as part of those advisor alerts. And the bonus there is you could actually then push the internal funding opportunities from Pivot directly into InfoReady using that push to InfoReady button. So if that workflow works for you, it may be something to explore. A lot of people kind of have different workflows around their internal funding opportunities, but those can be loaded into Pivot as well and truly make it kind of a one-stop shop for all of the sort of funding opportunities you're pushing to your users. We also have a newsletters feature that you're seeing on the right. It's essentially a custom email that you can create, and you can choose what lists or opportunities to push out. So Pivot can sort of be that that way that you communicate about funding opportunities to anyone, any individual or group of people. And we have a lot of institutions that use it to kind of send targeted communications around funding opportunities to specific groups or centers or interdisciplinary groups, things like that. They'll use that newsletter feature. Next. And I'll just wrap here. Obviously, you saw all about the InfoReady integration. This is one of the most popular features in Pivot. And I think Haley described really all the benefit. It is, I'll just reiterate, it is free if you have a subscription to Pivot as well as a subscription to InfoReady. There's nothing you need to do to integrate it. You just make a request to support on the InfoReady side or support on the Pivot side. It takes us, just a matter of days behind the scenes to configure that. And then you'll see within any Pivot opportunity that you search, the push to InfoReady button. It does everything that Haley demonstrated. And again, the sort of true benefit of it is really the accuracy of the data that goes into, obviously you can input data manually into InfoReady, cut and paste information into there. But the data in Pivot is accurate, it's up to date. And as you saw Haley demonstrate, it'll really fill in all of those forms and all of those fields in a matter of seconds. And no matter how customized you've created your template in InfoReady, you can push it into any of your own personal templates, and the data from Pivot will just populate the right spots within the InfoReady fields, and you'll just be ready to go. So that's it for me. I'll turn it back over to Max, and again, you'll see my contact info at the end, and feel free to reach out with any further questions.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Eddie. That was a great overview, and thanks so much again for joining us. So now I'm just going to go into a brief kind of overview of InfoReady Review for those of you that have never seen it before. So just a little bit about our company. We're called InfoReady Corporation, and our main purpose in life is to help universities promote and manage opportunities. So we believe software should meet three kind of basic criteria. It should be really user-friendly and require minimal to no training, even for admins. We believe software should be able to be fully implemented in weeks, not months or years. And we don't think software should require support from your IT team. So we build cloud-based solutions, and we serve as your support and IT team for the solution. Next slide, please. So just to give you a little sense of where InfoReady Review kind of falls in the pre-award cycle to kind of help you contextualize this a little bit, we have a helpful little diagram up here. So if you look at, if you think about the pre-awards cycle kind of starting from left to right on your screen there, the first step is you'd find a funding opportunity in Pivot. And then you'd have to run some kind of competition or review or selection process to select the pre-proposal that you wanted to advance. And that's kind of what you would use InfoReady Review for. So you can see those 4 boxes there, the pre-award step, that's kind of what you would use InfoReady Review for. And then you would go into the proposal development phase and collaboration phase with the PIs, and then do your system-to-system submissions or something like CAIUS 424 or something else like that. So I find that this slide just kind of helps people understand where we kind of fall in the life cycle of a grant. Next slide, please. And just to kind of expand on some of the functionality related to that pre-award process, what InfoReady Review allows folks to do, admins, is access and configure the system, disseminate opportunities like we saw Haley doing with her InfoReady homepage there, collect and review applications for those opportunities through the InfoReady portal, route materials for review and approval. We have a great configurable routing process that allows you to build out whatever routing you need for a specific award or application process. We can make awards through the system and track outcomes, including automated post-award reporting. So you can set up N number of post-award reports to automatically be collected at future dates from your awardees. And the system will also generate reports for you on competitions, on kind of global application processes, things like that. It's a really great database as well. So we've gone over some of this information already. Again, what InfoReady Review does is it helps with competition and review management, specifically for research and sponsored programs. We really try to build our solution with clients' input in mind, which has resulted in a 99% client retention rate year over year for InfoReady. Again, we can implement very quickly, and the system is all kind of self-service, so the admin can very easily configure their own competition workflows and templates, as we saw Haley do. And we're currently used at over 150 institutions globally, including a third of all our R1 institutions. And our clients range in size from some of the largest institutions in the country in terms of research productivity, all the way down to really small undergraduate schools who might use the solution for things like poster competitions and travel grants and things like that. And over on the right-hand side of the screen, you'll see some of the kind of cornerstone uses of InfoReady Review at a glance. So many of our clients use the solution for external limited submissions, internal competitions, seed grants, poster competitions, travel grants, no-cost extensions, and sign-offs associated with no-cost extensions, and it's almost 100 other processes that our clients use the system for. Next slide, please. And here's a little breakdown of how your peers use InfoReady Review in terms of the use cases. So you'll see we have a lot of internal funding there. Almost 85% of our clients use the solution for internal funding opportunities, about half for limited submissions, and then we have a number of other kind of processes here. And again, these slides will all are all available on your GoToMeeting control panel there in the handout section. Next slide, please. All right, and so here's just a couple of institutions that use InfoReady Review. See, we have the University of Virginia and Texas Tech game up there in the right-hand corner. And we can go ahead to the next slide. Great, so this is just my contact info and Eddie's contact info. Again, my name is Max Steinerman. I'm the Director of Sales for Research and Sponsored Programs at InfoReady. If you'd like to reach out to me for more information, please feel free to do so using that contact info. And Eddie Neuwirth is the Senior Director of Product Management for Research Services at Ex Libris, which is a ProQuest company. Please feel free to reach out to him for any questions related to Pivot. I want to thank everybody for their time today and for joining us. And thanks especially to Haley for your presentation. We really enjoyed seeing that, Haley, and I'm looking forward to meeting you in person at Nordup.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you. I'll see you at Nordup.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody. Have a great afternoon.
Bye-bye.